8 sets of monkey magnets for only $9.99. Monkey magnets are guaranteed to last 10 years or your money back. But wait, due to rising costs and supply chain shortages, this may be your last chance to get monkey magnets at this low price. There is a strict limit of 1 full house pack per order while supplies last. So order now to keep all your doors and drawers shut tight with monkey magnets.
Call 1-800-519-4810. That's 1-800-519-4810. Call or visit getmonkeymagnets.com. So call 1-800-519-4810. Order now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Breaking Point. You're watching Real America's Voice News. I have an action-packed show for you today, and man, has it been a whirlwind. I got back from Washington, D.C. last week. Real America's Voice News sent me down there to fill in for Brian Glenn, who was out for a couple of days, and I was down there at the White House when the Iran bombing took place, and got to be on the South Lawn watching Trump's departure on Marine One for Bedminster, and then his return the next day. And obviously the decision was already made when he got off the chopper because that mission started 17 hours before. But we didn't know what was up. Trump looked resolute, determined, did not stop and take any questions like he did the night before at Bedminster. Did not stop and take any questions like he did the night before at Bedminster or in Jersey at the airport on his way to Bedminster. And it was really just a fascinating situation unfolding at the White House. We knew something was up. And then an hour later, we got word there was a bombing. But then there was a tight lid on the press at 6:40 p.m. And we broadcast well into the night, I think almost to about midnight. Trump making a speech from the East Room in the White House, an historic event, and, not only peace through strength, but taking decisive and bold action to end an existential threat, not just to Israel, but the surrounding countries around Israel and potentially the United States, because Iran's goal was to take, ballistic missiles and throw their, nuclear weaponized missiles at other countries, or even if they just wanted it as a deterrent, they've been bad actors. And if you take all the terrorist attack going back to like Jim Buckley, the CIA station chief I think in Lebanon, and Colonel Higgins hanging our colonel on TV, and the U.S. Navy SEAL dumped on the tarmac in Beirut in the early 80s on the TWA flight and blowing up our embassy twice, killing 241 Marines who were in Lebanon. And, the attack on the senior center in Argentina, I think they killed about 85 seniors, an attack on Jews. Khobar Towers killing 19 of our servicemen, but a year before did it. Another attack prior that killed 5 or 6 American troops as well. These guys are bad actors. I am concerned about all the intertwined things involved over there and the instability of, Iran right now. And there's a lot of, there's Salafis, there's the Sunni versus the Shia element. You've got Turkey chomping at the bit, seething, to make a move here. They benefited from the HTS in Syria because they're Salafis, and Erdogan is exploiting that, and he benefited from that. So will there be expanded influence in the region? And where does it leave the safety of the Gulf states, right? You've got the UAE, an incredible economy, like 100 years of, or 100 billion barrels in reserve of oil over there, but they also buy like $7 or $8 billion in goods from Iran every year, including petrochemicals and some fossil fuels and other goods, and the other nations over there, and Qatar, where you had the International Brotherhood money over there, and Salafi terrorists over there. And then you got the Saudi government, who was actually attacking Salafi terrorists for us after 9/11 in the Egyptian region and other areas. They've got their own intricate battles between Al-Qaeda, which is basically dedicated to taking out the royal family, going back to the Wahhabists in the 18th century, going all the way back to Taymiyyah in the 13th century, and the strict interpretation of the Quran. There's a battle going on inside the Islamic world. And then you got the Deobandi. Al-Qaeda means the base, but there were like 14 groups that evolved from that. And then you've got the Deobandi operating on the Indian subcontinent, Sri Lanka, and other areas. So this is a powder keg, and this isn't something to take lightly. But we can't be mushes, and we can't be delivering pallets of cash, $2 billion in cash on pallets, and I'm not an advocate of going to war unless you really have to. But Trump made a decision. I think it's been effective thus far, and something we have to keep a lid on, a cap on, to make sure if there are any attacks on Al-Assad Air Base, which they attacked after Soleimani was killed by Trump in 2017. Trump's the only one who's taken action. And, some of these preemptive strikes, like these incredible attacks in Somalia, where you had 16 F-18 Super Hornets taken off of the deck of the USS Harry Truman in the Red Sea over there, and going into Somalia and taking out al-Shabaab and ISIS targets, the largest Navy base bombing in the history of the world, authorized under Donald Trump to take out Shabaab and ISIS, guys hiding in caves and cave networks in Somalia. So there's been a string of things that Trump has done that, don't get much attention, and he's not getting credit for, that may prevent these, when people say forever wars, they don't want to be entrenched somewhere for 15 or 20 years anymore. And they don't want U.S. lives dying or to be maimed in unexpected circumstances like Soleimani's brutal IEDs that may have led to the deaths of somewhere between 600 and 1,000 U.S. soldiers in Iraq. These liquid metal forming copper explosive devices that melt at like 4,000 degrees, the copper, tied into these 155 millimeter shells that go and they split our convoys like butter because the copper melts and creates a spear. And I'll never forget my time at Chris Levy. I used to run a veterans group and take wounded soldiers, the most grievously wounded soldiers from Ward 57 in the Army Hospital, Walter Reed, in D.C. It took them to Congress to testify about conditions in Afghanistan, being out hundreds of miles from the main post. They couldn't trust the tribal police, tribal leaders, or the local police. And, these guys are stuck out there, and they were getting maimed and under attack and couldn't trust people. So it's really important that we, don't go to war unless we really have to. And I look at as Afghanistan as a success in the sense that we prevented many terrorist attacks around the world. I have family in the Joint Terrorism Task Force that was taking off the battlefield, the most wanted by the FBI after 9/11, and transporting them to Gitmo. And we did do a lot of good things. And we didn't lose like soldiers for the last 17 or 19 months of the Trump presidency, right? Prior to Trump there, Biden takes over and just throws everything in the garbage. Listen, I could go on forever about this stuff, but Trump's in the driver's seat, getting respect from NATO. And these B-2 missions were so incredible. 7 B-2 bombers taking off and dropping these bunker busters on there. There were Operation Midnight Hammer was the largest strike package. They dropped 420 20,000 pounds of GBUs, not including the 30 or so 1,000-pound T-LAM Tomahawk missiles on these locations in Iran that may have crippled the Iranian nuclear weapons program, at least for now, maybe for a number of years. But the longest B-2 Spirit mission prior to that was in 2001, when B-2 Spirit bombers from the 509th Bomb Wing from Whiteman Air Force Base flew 3 days of missions, like 45 hours of missions. It was like a 15,000-mile bombing run en route to over there in Afghanistan. And I got to tell you, what these pilots are able to pull off is so incredible and deserves credit. You know, the largest strikes before that, or the longest distance covered by bomber strikes, you have to go back to, like, I think the first Gulf War. There was a very long mission there. But 1982, British Vulcan bombers went from the Ascension Islands and attacked Port Stanley in the Falklands War, and that was about 8,000 miles and with in-flight refuelings. And that was a big accomplishment for the British, for the Royal Air Force. But the number of things happening under Trump is stunning. We're securing a position in the world. I just think that we have to watch things really closely, and I don't want things to escalate in Ukraine. We'll see where Russia's going to stand and what they're going to do. But they said last week that every step a Russian soldier takes in Ukraine belongs to the Russians. So I hope Putin doesn't want to double down now, because we've protracted this war out, and it looks like Zelensky might be coming around a little bit. I don't know. So we're going to follow all this closely, but I've got a great show for you today. I want to thank you so much for joining us. I'm so honored to be part of the Real America's Voice News family. I want to thank all your viewers. I enjoyed your diverse views going in the War Room chat this past week when I was in Washington, D.C. That's what's good about the conservative type MAGA base, is that you're allowed to disagree. But we stand by Donald Trump right now. And that's what makes America great. Thank you again. And we'll be right back. And I want to bring you a message from Birch Gold. Good time to buy gold right now. As countries have walked away in the past few years from the U.S. dollar, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, diversify into gold, into Birch Gold. And for over 5,000 years, gold has withstood inflation, geopolitical turmoil, and stock market crashes. And the great news is you can still get it. In fact, you can own gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. Birch Gold makes it easy to convert your IRA or 401k into an IRA in precious metals. And all you got to do is text the word America to 989898 to claim your free info kit on gold. With 20 years experience converting IRAs and 401ks into precious metal IRAs, Birch Gold can help you protect yourself with gold today by texting the word America to 989898 with an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers, and countless 5-star reviews. Secure your future with gold. Start today with a free info kit. Again, there's no obligation. Check it out. Make the request. Just text the word America to 989898. Your head's probably spinning already. I'm going to make it spin around a little bit more. So much going on, so much to talk about here. But I have Yuri Kaufman with us. We've had him on before, Middle East expert, author of American Intifada and 18 Days in October. I want to welcome back Yuri Kaufman. How are you, sir?
Great to be here. Thanks so much.
Yes, you gave us some great insight the last time you were on. I know that you're a respected historian and an author about what's happening here. I wanted to come out of the gate and talk about this New York City mayor's race because, Zohran Mamdani is a Muslim. And it's not just because he's Muslim. He's a radical leftist, Marxist Muslim. And now you're going to have two of the largest cities in the world, or in the Western Hemisphere, outside of Mexico City, London and New York, led by a radical Islamist. What do you say?
I don't care that he's a Muslim, honestly. And to be honest, I don't know much about the mayor of London, but I can tell you, I live in 3 blocks from New York City. I'm right in Long Island, but right on the county line.
Yes.
I grew up in New York. I've been living around here my whole life. So we're all trying to take a measure of this guy. But what they're saying is just downright terrifying. They're saying he actually compared the October 7 Hamas attack with the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. I mean, are you kidding me? What does he think of 9/11? Is that like the Alamo? Is that maybe the Hanukkah roof? I mean, this guy's, if that's true, he's nuts. I mean, he's just plain crazy. He talks about globalize the Intifada. That's a call to violence. His policies are bonkers. He's talking about socialized grocery stores. He's talking about a rent freeze in a city that already has a housing shortage. There's tens of thousands of empty apartments in New York because landlords can't afford to renovate them, to make them habitable, because they're not allowed to charge rent. He says, let's double down. You can't charge what you're charging now. We'll all be homeless the way we're going. And what's scariest of all is we've been through this, okay? New York elected a radical liberal in the 1960s named John Lindsay. Now, he was nominally a Republican because in those days, the progressives were actually Republicans, hard as it is to believe. Luckily, Ronald Reagan drove the money changers out of the temple and got rid of them. But he was a radical liberal. He did the same stuff, and the city burned down. If you can't charge rent enough to upkeep your building, you abandon it. And an abandoned building is a fire waiting to happen under de Blasio, which is, 2 mayors ago. He stopped giving rent increases. So we're already like 12 years into this where the landlords are all starving. In the 1960s, New York found out that they thought they were cheating their landlords. They ended up cheating themselves. We're going to find out the same thing with this guy.
John Lindsay ran in a plurality. He won in a plurality in a 3-way race. Now with the 4 or 5-way race, Zohran could win. It's a very real possibility here. And there's I think 200,000 Muslim voters in the city. That would add to his base, probably. And again, I agree with you. It's not that he's a Muslim. It's his positions. And they're very scary. They're very scary. And like I said, too, I always talk about the watermelon, where Islam meets Marxism, the red in the middle for the communists and the green on the outside for Hamas. My friend Rich Higgins wrote a paper on that in the National Security Council. God rest his soul. And McMaster didn't like it, but Trump loved it. And he got fired for writing that paper. All right. So I wanted to talk about you wrote a book, 18 Days in October, talking about the Yom Kippur War. Was it the Yom Kippur War or 73?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's it. That's the one.
So in comparison to this war, which lasted about 12 days, in a sense, are there any comparisons?
Well, certainly, first of all, I got to go back to the watermelon analogy because it's spot on, because I don't know if you even realize this, but the Palestinians have made watermelon one of their great symbols, because if you look at the Palestinian flag, it's got the red triangle. So think of a slice of watermelon, and that's a big symbol for them. So it's pretty apt. But anyway, I mean, the obvious way that the two compare is the surprise attack. The Egyptians and the Syrians attacked by surprise on the Yom Kippur holiday in 1973, caught everyone by surprise. This time it was on October the 7th, which was another Jewish holiday called Simchat Torah. And they did the same thing. This time they really, it ended very, very badly for the Arabs, as is now apparent. The other comparison is in both instances, it was a Republican president that rescued Israel. And in both instances, I have to tell you, I shudder to think of what would have happened if the Democrat had won the election. George McGovern, who ran, of course, against Nixon in 72, was a very unabashed liberal. He was not very fond of Israel, and that was against the stream in those days. In those days, the Democrats were very pro-Israel. He stood out the other way. And I don't have to tell you what Kamala was all about. I mean, Kamala basically said during while she was vice president in a speech on July 25th, 2024, that if she won the election, Israel was going to lose that war. She was going to put a stop to it. So I guess in both instances, Israel got lucky that way.
Yeah, going back to the Six-Day War in 1967, the Israelis knocked out like a third of the Egyptian Air Force before they even took off. And their air campaign in 73 was like a 46-hour battle. It was unprecedented, right, for its time. I wanted to talk about George McGovern, though, quick. My old boss was a Republican leader here in New York, in Suffolk County, and he worked alongside Nixon. He brought an 81,000 vote majority to Suffolk County, one of the highest in the nation, next to Orange County, California. But he gave me this article that George McGovern wrote called "Run Your Business for You Run for Office," because he was a socialist, right? But in the 90s, he tried to build a hotel in Connecticut as a private builder. And he failed because of the bureaucracy. Right. And he wrote an article called "Run Your Business Before You Run for Government" or "Run for Office." I thought that was a lesson in life for him.
It's true, and what he should have written was "Run your business the way Ronald Reagan ran government," and then it might have actually succeeded. But yeah, I mean that's absolutely the case. Politics were very different in those days. Lyndon Johnson was, until Donald Trump, I would have said, the most friendly president Israel ever had. He was outstanding. He was great, and in those days, if you were a Democrat, it was fine to be pro-Israel. But unfortunately, we're in another time. And in our time, too many Democrats, I think, are just too juiced up on the issue of race. And that's really what this boils down to. Ask yourself a simple question. Biden budgeted billions of dollars for the Palestinians after the October 7th attack. Now, he would have said it was for the innocent civilians. Okay, I get that. But try to imagine if the Palestinians were white supremacists who attacked Israel, who murdered 1,200 people, who raped women, who said Jews are apes and pigs. And the opinion polls showed complete support, as it did in Gaza. Do you really think Biden would have given billions of dollars, to white supremacists who said those things? Of course he wouldn't. But here we are, and now they're people of color. So now the Democrats aren't so sure. And this is really the tide that we're swimming against. And, you look at Azora Mandani, and co-opting, I can even say, Jewish history and applying it to the October 7th attack. I mean, it's utterly bizarre.
Yeah, I was on the South Lawn last week waiting for Trump's arrival on Marine One as the White House correspondent for Real America's Voice News, filling in for Brian Glenn, who's doing a great job down there. And Trump came right off the helicopter, right into the White House, to the Oval Office for a national security meeting. And then they put a lid on everything. But about an hour later, after he landed, they announced that they bombed. And that mission started 17 hours earlier, but Trump kept a good lid on that. It was such an incredible evening in there. Now, you predicted that, peace through strength would work for Trump, but you also have been an advocate. I was worried about spillover. I was worried about attacks on Qatar and Al-Assad Air Base, but that really hasn't panned out yet, right?
It most definitely is not. And those of us who observe this a lot thought it played out exactly the way people thought. I mean, once in a while, the analysts actually get it right. This is what the Iranians did back when Trump took out Qasem Soleimani. They fired some rockets. It was choreographed. A few Americans suffered some traumatic brain injury. I'm not minimizing that. But the fact of the matter is it was a tiny fraction of what people expected. And I want to make one other really important point. What Donald Trump did, when I predicted he was going to do it, I was sweating. And I'll tell you why. There was an Axios poll on Friday. Of course, the American attack was Saturday night. There was an Axios poll the day before, and it only showed 16% of Americans supporting a strike on Iran. So Donald Trump ordered that strike, frankly, without the American people behind him. And I'm a bit of a history buff. I was kind of poking around, trying to find an example of a leader going to war when that war would have only enjoyed 16% in the polls. I couldn't find one, but Trump did it. And now, of course, like 80% of Americans say, yeah, it was the right thing to do. It was a great decision. So, that's what leadership is all about. And that's what leadership through strength is all about. And we're all experiencing the benefit now. Iran has stood down. The nuclear program is finally gone. The world is a much, much safer place. And it's a safer place for America. He put America first.
Yeah, incredible events, incredible times that we're living in. All right, so we got to go. But before we do, tell our viewers where they can buy American Intifada and some of your other stuff. And where can they follow you, because you have so much insight.
So American Intifada, unfortunately, is largely on Amazon. It's in some bookstores. I've been a little disappointed at the rollout in that sense, although 18 Days in October actually, thankfully, did quite well. I'm going to toot my horn here and tell you the CIA has a publication, and they described it as a, quote, masterpiece. I was actually a little floored by that. The Financial Times picked it as one of the best books of the year. You can get that at Barnes & Noble. American Intifada, I'm afraid you got to go out on Amazon. But we've gotten a terrific response so far. The book is doing really well, and we've gotten some great feedback. So please look for it. Thank you very much.
And social media, 10 seconds.
Social media, I'm a 20th century guy. I apologize. That's right. I'll get there eventually.
I still have an Olivetti typewriter in my bedroom. So, all right. Thank you, Yuri Kaufman, for joining us, and we'll have you back soon.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. You too. All right, everybody, don't go anywhere. We got great stuff ahead. Well, you got to keep your head on a swivel to keep up with everything that is going on. Trump making bold moves, showing leadership, that's for sure. Getting respect out of NATO while the media was trying to say, oh, they're calling you daddy and all this. What are you doing to everybody? Meanwhile, they're coughing up their fair share, except for Spain. But they'll talk to them over Ebola, gazpacho, I'm sure. And these countries have to contribute and start defending themselves and be ready for these things. And the United States could save like $335 billion a year or so if we do that. I have our next guest with us, Major Fred Galvin. He's the author of A Few Bad Men, the true story of the U.S. Marines ambushed in Afghanistan and betrayed in America. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, David.
I really appreciate you joining us. I know that you have your own experiences to share with the audience, and thank you so much for your service. You're U.S. Marine Corps retired, correct?
That's correct.
And, Trump under a lot of pressure. It's got to be extraordinary. But he plans on limiting sending classified information to Congress after this intel assessment on Iran damage was leaked. Is this unprecedented? And tell us about your book and how it compares to your experiences.
Absolutely. Well, this is exactly where the director of national intelligence needs to provide who has a requirement to know this information. So just because someone has a top secret clearance, as I did in the Marines and as an intelligence official afterwards, after retiring from the Marine Corps, you may have a top secret security clearance. You may have access to special access programs. But if you do not have the need to know specific programs, you don't have the right to know that. And as you mentioned, there was one gentleman who was in the Special Operations Task Force that I was a commander of. He didn't spill the information. He didn't share the information or leak it, but he had classified information on a government unclassified computer. Now, that computer was not plugged in any type of internet source where it was shared, but he created briefs, and the bottom line is he built briefs on a classified computer for his convenience because it was faster for them to do that on an unclassified computer, and put a thumb drive in and put it into and it was just a big no-no. So everyone who has a classified clearance, whether it's secret or top secret or beyond that with polygraph and special access programs, you sign documents that say it's cradle to grave. If you ever divulge any of this information, which is different than mishandling it, you can, oops, I forgot, and not be wittingly, those are still punishable. And in this gentleman's case, in the task force that I commanded, he was separated from the United States Marine Corps, and he was an officer. So this does happen, but it seems strange that people who are sharing information or spilling it intentionally in the intelligence community and with members of Congress, they're not held accountable. Yeah. This is what we need to correct.
Yeah, and in such a politically charged environment. In your situation, you commanded a special operations task force in combat, right? And you were ambushed by the Taliban, and you were dragged through the mud under lawfare and other types of things. How does that relate to classified information?
Well, very similar, and I'm going to add a different subject, but what the Secretary of Defense and the President were discussing last night, where you have highly trained, skilled warriors. In our case, special operators fighting on the ground against an enemy. And in this case, what occurred this last week or weekend, these were the most highly trained aviators doing a day and a half long mission in the air, precise coordinates, dropping precision guided munitions on target. And now you have people downplaying the American citizens. You have people doing that on social media. You have members of Congress. You have members of the media and then somebody says they're in the intelligence community and they're spilling information that the public doesn't have a right to know that. So just like this administration, they have a right to go out and track down who had access to that information, where that was shared, put subpoenas on people who in the media who said, okay, this person gave this to me. You cannot, I mean, that is national security information that is not shareable with people without that clearance, and definitely not in the media. But this type of lawfare did happen to us. We were going after the enemy. We were shot at, blown up, shot at on multiple sides, sniper fire, trapped in this kill zone. We killed the enemy at 9 o'clock in the morning, point blank. And then this started, within 20 minutes, this was out on the BBC first, and then the New York Times, Washington Post. For 12 years, we got assassinated. Even after we went through the longest courtroom trial where we were exonerated, there are some people who wanted to lay the blame on particularly myself and the unit that I commanded. So they would do these drive-bys in the media. So I served for 7 more years, and even after the day I retired, they hit me that day and several other times that year, and it continued on. And it's very damaging, like the president's experiencing with this professional destruction.
But you turned it the other way, and you were saying that because you're targeted like Trump, you never back down. Tell us about that refusal to fail and fighting back.
Yes. So some people who have voted for people that they respect, and in my case, these are military officers, very senior general officers, who in America, we have a lot of patriotism, but it's just like we have in the military, it's trust, but verify. If you do something where you're dragging your own members of the Marine Corps, the frontline foot soldiers, and you're destroying them, you need to be held accountable. That needs to be exposed. So that's what took me 11 years to get this information declassified, which what I just described to you, David, that's a garden variety gun battle. This is not Jason Bourne's knock list or the locations of submarines at sea. This is, day one tactics of the Taliban attacking Marines. So there was no need to have this procedure that they use in the courtroom where for 3.5 weeks, longest courtroom trial in Marine Corps history, they would move the media out of the court. The media was allowed in there, but every time there was a defense witness with exculpatory information, which they knew, the media would get escorted out. So you got one side of the media. So we were exonerated, but the label in the press that continued for 12 years until January 2nd, 2019, the day after General Mattis was fired by President Trump as his Secretary of Defense. Well, 6 months prior, actually 7 months prior to that, in May 2018, a board convened in the Pentagon, and they fully exonerated us, but they sat on their hands because not only was General Mattis the Secretary of Defense in 2018, but he was the convening authority in our case in 2007. So he was the puppeteer. He was the Geppetto pulling all the strings, and he did not want, but we were exonerated. Thank God for this female civilian general counsel with the Department of the Navy. Yeah. She bottom line this 12-page report that named names, and that was what fully exonerated us under Donald Trump's watch.
In about 30 seconds, tell our viewers where they can find A Few Bad Men, the true story of U.S. Marines ambushed in Afghanistan and betrayed in America, a story of real-life betrayal, corruption, and redemption. Major Fred Galvin.
Yes, David, this has been sold out many times nationwide, so you can get it on Amazon. It's available on Audible, hardback, Kindle, and you can go to my website, commandoshow.com, and find out more information about A Few Bad Men.
All right. I'm very grateful. I know you're far away, that you came and joined us today. And I'd love to have you back and talk some more. And thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you, David.
All right, everybody, we're going to bring you a message from longtime supporters of the show, Breaking Point. Switch to USA.com. Switch, the number 2, USA.com. Buy American. I'm so excited to have Maria from switch2usa.com with us. Switch, the number 2, USA.com. She's been a longtime supporter of the show, and we're so grateful. Maria, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me, David. And I'm very excited to be here and let everyone know what's been going on.
Yeah. So tell us about Switch to USA, American-made products by American factory workers.
This is an extraordinary time for all of us to be in this mission. The mission is not only MAGA, but MAHA, right? And we've been in this business for maybe 3.5, 4 years, some of us maybe longer. We are an American manufacturer. We did the deep dive. We found an American manufacturer that's been doing business for 40 years. And it's a discount club membership. So you get between 45 and 47% off when you shop monthly. It's all wellness products, cleaning, laundry, toothpaste, mouthwash, the basic essentials for every American. So I always say, if you have skin and hair and teeth, this is where you need to be. This is a mission where we can defund the BlackRock and the pyramid scheme that's BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. And this is an American-owned, made in America manufacturer. They're all processed here in the USA, manufactured here in the USA. Everything is door delivered, including our ranch. We have a ranch, and everything is USA processed right here from our ranch. They have a processing center.
All right. Tell our viewers how they can get involved and how do they find you?
Oh, please come to switch2usa.com. Either myself or my family and team will answer your call. Please schedule an appointment. So expect to hear about the details. You get to pick and choose if you want beef or wellness or both. We'll sign you up and expect to shop with us on the very first time. And then every month thereafter, you get to shop all by yourself. And remember, this is a patriot mission. And we're so grateful that we get to build America.
All right, Maria Lynn, love to see you. And go to the bottom of the screen there, switch2usa.com, and get it today. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Breaking Point, Unreal America's Voice News. I'll tell you, this last couple of weeks has been some journey between all the things covering the ICE protest in New York City, Bernie Kerrick's funeral, the 250th Army Parade, filling in for Brian Glenn as the White House correspondent while the bombing was going on with Iran. Really just an incredible time to live. And I had some hope for Washington, D.C. when I was there. I have a little bit of hope for New York City until the results of the primaries. And here to discuss that for the mayoral race is author Donald Wilkie. He's the author of Freedom Revealed, A Simple, Elegant System. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And, you know, I could see the campaign slogan now, don't mess with the Zoran, right, in New York City. Mamdani, basically a radical Marxist, the watermelon, where Islam meets the Marxist culture, green on the outside for Islam, red in the middle for socialism, Marxism, and communism. What do you say?
Well, socialism doesn't work. But the problem is most people never ask the question, why doesn't it work? And that's what I answer in my book. And the real simple answer, if you'll allow me,
sure, is
that everybody thinks socialism is an economic system. But in reality, it's a government system. And what it is the government distorting the marketplace. And the reason the marketplace and government are different is because government is singular, so there's no competition. The marketplace has a lot of competition. One's a competitive system, one's a non-competitive system, and that makes all the difference.
Right. So we have this incredible mayor's race going on. I think part of the reason why Mamdani won the primary was a protest vote against Cuomo in a way. And, you know, I would take Curtis over anybody. I would even take Adams over anybody besides Curtis because he's kind of getting the message. He got away with murder maybe with, you know, his corrupt police commissioner under him, the Turkish deal, Trump not pursuing, you know, the indictments and all that other stuff. So, but the new police commissioner is doing a better job in New York City, Jessica Tisch. Now, shootings and murders are down. Rape's still up 22%. Felony assault still at 25-year highs. De Blasio numbers, misdemeanor assaults up, 30-something thousand New Yorkers assaulted in the streets. But the business climate in New York City is awful. There's no buzz anymore. Curtis took a picture last year of 3rd Avenue at 10 in the morning. There's no traffic. You know, there's not really a lot going on. Congestion pricing's killed it. The economy, COVID, 40% of the office buildings still empty. So, or only 40% of the buildings still occupied for office space since COVID. Tell us, what is the damage that having a socialist as a mayor is going to do to New York if that happens?
Well, he's just going to distort the marketplace further. The only way you eliminate waste is through competition. And in socialism, there is no competition. The way I always win the socialist argument is I ask a socialist, how do you eliminate waste? And they never have an answer. So you have a socialist system, you let the government run grocery stores he's talking about, and you're just going to compound it. Why did they have to wait in the Soviet Union for hours at a time to get a chunk of meat with hair sticking out of it? You know?
I saw the bread lines. I saw the bread lines in Moscow in '86. I saw them.
Well, that's how it works. I mean, you have waste. Now, what happens in the private sector when you have competition? Hey, people won't go there. And what happens to your company? You go out of business. Well, what happens to government if nothing works right? They stay there and they double down on what they're doing. That's the whole problem. So
Mamdani's economic platform has some crazy things in it. Can you go over some of his things like rent stabilization and getting rid of like privately owned convenience stores? What's this guy doing?
Well, I just heard a little bit about his marketplace. Grocery store proposition.
Yeah.
And, you know, the buildings aren't going to pay rent. They're not going to pay taxes. So that's going to cut your costs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to make a profit. So that's going to cut your costs. What he never says, what they never talk about is the waste that government has to create. A non-competitive system has to create waste. You can't eliminate it. And that's always way worse than any savings you might talk about. And again, anytime you look at a socialist system, they're always dirt poor. And nobody understands why, but it's just simply a lack of competition. They're not a marketplace system. They're a government system.
Yeah, New York City might be one of the safest large cities in the country per capita. But I will tell you that it's probably the filthiest. And the rodents, the leaks, the mold, right? The heating breakdowns. These landlords, they can't survive if the government wants to take their property or give them, peanuts. New York City's used to free market, high rents, Fifth Avenue, downtown, all that stuff. We're looking at the middle class being wiped out.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I should tell you that I'm from Detroit, and Detroit went broke, as you know, and it saw everything you're talking about now a lot sooner than New York has. And that's exactly what happened to Detroit, the entire industrial base. Detroit was the greatest industrial city in the country in the 50s, 60s. And by 1980, the entire industrial base had left it. There was nothing left. There was no tax revenue for the government. And today in Detroit, believe it or not, there's vast open areas, acres and acres of open field where they've just torn everything down. Now, we were never as big as New York, and that's a difference. But there was no law. Anarchy reigned in Detroit, and it looks like it's coming to New York.
I worked alongside the Giuliani administration representing private developers, and I am a firsthand witness and a participant to Giuliani, New York City Housing Partnership, taking the Jack Kemp enterprise zones, giving people maybe a grant through like the state Sunny May lending program, which was a great program for first-time buyers. It would take some money off the sale price of a new home. They would give the land to the builders if it was city-owned or tax-condemned or in-rem lots, and they were able to build these 3-story townhomes, that would go for not a lot of money, but you gave title to people. They cleaned up the streets. They kicked out the drug dealers. I watched it firsthand in Bushwick and the Bronx. That's why we have Williamsburg today and the Park Slope revival and all that other stuff. But his anchor revitalization program, bringing back and attracting retail businesses, guaranteeing with federal seed money guarantees for builders to take risks in bad areas. Brooklyn, Coney Island, Mermaid Avenue, Harlem, 125th Street, 116th, and Lenox. Who's going to do that for New York City?
I don't know, but you made a great point. Unless a person has skin in the game, what do they care?
Yeah.
They have to have an investment. And if they don't have an investment, they got nothing to lose. So that is another problem with socialism. You don't have people with an investment.
Right.
And Giuliani did a terrific job in New York, almost a miracle job. But it was predictable. You have to let the marketplace work. And prosperity is created when waste is eliminated from the marketplace. It's quite simple.
Right. We have this really competitive mayoral race, and if there's a 4 or 5 way split, Curtis only got 28% last general election. He only needs 30 to 35% to win in a plurality like John Lindsay did in 1969. He won in a 3-way race. If Cuomo jumps back in and runs, and Mamdani is the Democratic candidate, and then you have working families running, this could be, and then you might have Adams staying in as independent. Could be a path for Curtis Sliwa. What do you say?
It'd be very nice. I mean, I like Curtis. I like the things he's done. What I don't know is the money behind Mamdani. He's obviously well-financed. Somebody is propping him up. I don't know how deep the pockets are, and that's a question I think we should know.
Yeah, well, I guess it's also a question of where will Bloomberg's money go? He gave it to Cuomo, and Cuomo could stay in. He's not out, but I don't know. The whole thing's kind of a disaster here. Tell us about your book.
Well, it's the first time freedom has been looked at as a mechanical system as opposed to a philosophy. And I'll get to the heart of it. I've talked about it basically a little bit already, but I looked at nature and I asked myself, how does nature work? And one of the statements all environmentalists have is there's no waste in nature. Well, the question is, what drives waste out of nature? And the obvious answer is competition. Competition eliminates waste. So the natural world is extremely competitive. And the other part of the foundation of nature is everything in nature moves to ease. That's why we have signs at national parks that say, do not feed the animals. So you take these three simple concepts and apply them to everything, and they explain everything. How prosperity is created, why welfare never works, why socialism never works. And it's quite astounding when you take just these three simple concepts, almost like the three basic colors, and put them together in different ways, and you can predict outcomes.
Sure. Tell our viewers, where can they get your book and where can they follow you?
Substack, you can follow me there. I've got videos on YouTube too, freedomrevealed.net. And of course, Amazon, the big giant in the house. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Donald Wilkie, author of Freedom Revealed, A Simple, Elegant System. Thank you so much for joining us. And everybody, thank you for watching Breaking Point on Real America's Voice News. I'm sure more excitement coming this week. Well, we'll see you next time. Don't go anywhere.